Close your eyes. Not yet, not all the way. Just soften them. Let the edges of the room go a little blurry. Let the sounds around you begin to fade. The hum of something electrical, the distant movement of the world outside. Let all of it slowly, gently become background. You are safe here. Tonight, I am going to take you somewhere very far away. Somewhere that no longer exists, not in the way it once did. A place made of dust and lantern light and the smell of cardamom and old wool. A place where the road was everything. The road was life, and life was movement. And every stranger who arrived at your door was a story walking on 2 feet. Tonight, we go to a caravanserai, a rest house, an inn, standing alone at the edge of the Persian plateau, where the last hills of one world begin to flatten into the vast windswept corridors of Central Asia, where merchants from China and traders from the Mediterranean and pilgrims from places with no names left on any map, all of them eventually found their way to one door. This door. Before we begin, if this kind of story brings you peace, if the sound of a quiet voice traveling slowly through a world long gone helps your mind let go of the day, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment if you'd like. And then, gently, put your phone face down or set the sleep timer and let tonight's story carry you the rest of the way. Are you ready? Good. Then let us begin.
It is the hour just after sunset. Not night yet. Not quite. The sky above the Persian plateau is doing something extraordinary, the way it always does in this part of the world at this particular hour. It is turning colors that have no names in English. A deep, bruised violet at the very top of the dome of sky. Then lower, a band of orange so pale it is almost gold. And at the horizon, where the land meets what is left of the day, a thin, trembling line of rose. The air is cooling quickly. Out here on the plateau, the days are brutal. The sun does not shine so much as it presses down, a heavy, indifferent weight on everything below it. Stones, scrub grass, the dry riverbeds that fill only once or twice a year, the cracked, ancient earth that has been here so long it no longer remembers water. But the evenings are something else entirely.
As the sun drops, the heat lifts, and the plateau exhales, slowly, deeply, like a sleeping animal, releasing the warmth that has held all day back up into the cooling sky. And for 1 hour, maybe 2, the air is perfect, soft and still, and carrying with it the faintest smell of something dry and sweet, wild thyme perhaps, or the dust itself, which out here has a particular scent, ancient and clean, like stone and time. Into this evening, a line of figures moves slowly along a road. They are a caravan, not a large one, perhaps 20 camels loaded with bales wrapped in oiled cloth, perhaps 30 people on foot and on horseback. They have been walking since before sunrise. Their feet know the road now, the way feet know a floor in the dark, without thought, without effort. Their eyes are half closed. Their shoulders hang forward. They are very, very tired. And then, ahead, through the thickening dusk, one of them sees it. A light. Just one at first. A single lantern hung above a gate, throwing a small circle of amber warmth onto the road below. Then, as they come closer, another and another,
and the shape of something large and low and solid begins to separate itself from the darkness around it. Walls, high, thick walls of pale mud brick, almost the same color as the earth they rise from. A wide entrance arch, rounded at the top, with geometric tiles set into the border, faded blue and white, the glaze cracked and worn, but still beautiful in the lamplight. Above the arch, carved in old Kufic script, are words. A traveler who can read them will know the caravanseray's name. Kanaye Ra, the House of the Road. From somewhere inside the walls, there is the sound of water, a small fountain still running, the smell of smoke from a cook fire, the distant sound of someone singing, low and formless to themselves. The caravan does not need to be told. They know what this is. They have been dreaming of this for the last 3 hours. One by one the camels slow, and the men and women behind them slow too, and the whole long line of tired life folds itself, almost gratefully, toward the open gate. Step inside. The caravanserai is built around a central courtyard, a large open square of packed earth with a low stone fountain at its center. The fountain is old. The stone is dark with age and worn smooth where 1,000 hands have rested against it, cupping water to their faces at the end of long days. A single stream of water rises and falls in it, catching the lamplight, making a small, continuous sound that is somewhere between a trickle and a whisper. Around the courtyard, on all 4 sides, are the deep, arched alcoves where the animals are housed. Camels kneeling in the straw, their eyes half closed, their long lashes catching the light. A few horses standing with their heads low, already half asleep. A donkey who does not want to be quiet, but is outvoted by the general exhaustion of everything around him. Above the animal stalls, reached by a narrow staircase in each corner of the courtyard, are the rooms for the travelers. Small rooms, barely large enough for 2 people to sleep side by side. But each one has a wooden door that closes, a small window that looks out over the plateau where the stars are beginning to appear, a thick reed mat on the floor, and a heavy wool blanket folded at one end. After weeks on the road, a small room with a door that closes is a palace. In the center of the courtyard, between the fountain and the east wall, someone has built a fire. Not a cooking fire. That is at the back, behind the kitchen arch, where steam and smoke and the smell of mutton broth and flatbread and something spiced with cumin and coriander are drifting out into the evening air. This fire is a gathering fire, a conversation fire. It burns low and steady, sending sparks up into the dark above the walls. And already, even before the new caravan has fully arrived, there are people sitting around it. A merchant from Merv, his silk robe dusty at the hem, his beard oiled despite the road, is talking to a young man who appears to be from somewhere much further east. His clothing is different, his boots are different, and he holds his tea glass in a way that suggests the gesture was learned somewhere with entirely different customs around tea. Further back, half in shadow, a man in a dark cloak sits alone, writing in a book on his knee with the focused concentration of someone who has limited light and limited time and a great deal to say. And at the edge of the courtyard, at the top of the short staircase that leads from the kitchen to the open air, stands the innkeeper. Her name is Mariam. She is old, though it is difficult to say how old. Her face is the kind of face that stopped aging at some point and simply became permanent. Deeply lined, deeply calm, with eyes that are dark brown and sharp. and miss nothing. Her hair, where it escapes from under her headscarf, is the silver of old metal, and she wears it without apology. Her hands are large for her frame, and they are always doing something. Wiping, folding, adjusting, passing a cup from one hand to the other and back again. She has run this caravanserai for 31 years. She inherited it from her husband, who inherited it from his mother, who built it, or rather, who supervised its rebuilding from older ruins nearly a century before. The walls Mariam walks between every day have been resting on this plateau for so long that no one is entirely sure of their origin. There are older bricks at the base, Roman perhaps, or Sassanid, or something that predates both.
Mariam doesn't think about that much. She thinks about bread and firewood and whether the well will hold through the dry season, and whether the eastern trade route will stay open through the mountain passes this year, and whether the young man she hired last spring as a stable hand has learned enough to be trusted with the more difficult camels. But she also thinks about stories. Every traveler who has ever stopped at this caravanserai has left something behind, not always deliberately. A story overheard, a detail noticed, a name spoken in passing that lodged itself in Mariam's memory and never left. She has never written any of them down. She cannot write, but she remembers. She remembers the Chinese merchant who arrived in the middle of a storm, alone, with a crate of porcelain wrapped so carefully in silk and straw that not one piece had broken in 6 months of travel, and who wept quietly behind the stable wall when he thought no one was watching. She has always wondered what he was thinking about. She decided, eventually, that he was probably thinking about home. She remembers the physician from Bukhara who stayed for 2 weeks because his horse had gone lame, and who spent those 2 weeks in the courtyard teaching anyone who would sit still about the movements of the planets. He drew the paths of Mars and Venus in the dust with a stick, and the stable boy watched with his mouth open. And when the physician finally left, the boy spent 3 days trying to redraw the same diagrams from memory. She remembers the woman who arrived with no name, or rather, who gave no name. She came alone, which was unusual enough. She was well dressed, but tired in the way that goes deeper than the body, tired in the spirit, behind the eyes. She stayed for 4 nights. She ate alone. She slept, Mariam suspected, a very long time. And on the morning of the 5th day, she was gone before sunrise, leaving on the mat of her small room a single silk ribbon, red, with a pattern of pomegranates along its border, folded very neatly, as if it were a letter.
Mariam still has it. It is tucked into a fold of the old curtain that hangs inside the kitchen door. She has never decided what it means. But tonight, there is no time for old memories. The caravan has arrived, and there are 20 camels that need water and fodder, and perhaps 30 hungry and exhausted people who need bread and hot food and a place to sleep. And all of that needs organizing, and Mariam is the one who organizes it. She comes down the staircase with a clay lamp in one hand and the efficiency of someone who has done this 10,000 times, because she has, more or less, and she begins. The unloading of a caravan is a process. It is not fast. Each camel must be persuaded to kneel, and camels are famously not creatures that enjoy being persuaded of anything. They groan, they complain, they look at you with their long-lashed, ancient, deeply unimpressed eyes, and then eventually, with enormous theatrical reluctance, they fold their front legs and sink to the ground. and the load on their backs can be untied and lifted free.
The goods are many. Bales of raw silk from the east, wrapped in oilcloth. A crate of lacquered boxes, each one nested inside the next like a puzzle. Bags of pepper and cinnamon, so fragrant that when the porter carrying them passes close, you can smell the spice market of a city 3,000 miles away. Rolled carpets from Khorasan. A wooden chest, padlocked, that belongs to the merchant who walks close beside it and does not let it out of his sight. 3 bales of raw cotton. A large glazed amphora sealed with wax that no one will say contains what it probably contains. The things that travel the Silk Road are not just goods. They are conversations between worlds. While the unloading happens, Mariam moves through the courtyard like water moving around stones, efficient, unhurried, always finding the right path. She directs the stable hand toward the camels. She sends the kitchen girl for more bread. She herself carries a stack of clean wool blankets up the narrow staircase to the upper rooms, checking each one before she sets the blanket down. The mat straight, the window latch working, the small clay lamp on its ledge filled with enough oil for the night. Gradually, over the course of perhaps an hour, the courtyard settles. The camels are watered and fed and kneeling in the straw, making their small, gurgling, satisfied sounds. The horses are still. The loaded goods are stacked under the covered arcade along the north wall, covered in cloth, watched over by a young man who has been given this job and takes it seriously. The travelers have dispersed to their rooms, or to the kitchen, or to the fire in the courtyard. The sound of eating and low voices drifts through the evening air. Someone is playing a stringed instrument. Just a few notes, repeated softly. The way a person plays when they are not really performing, but simply filling silence with something more comfortable than nothing. The fountain continues its small, steady sound. The fire burns lower. The stars above the open courtyard multiply. Out here, away from cities, away from any competing light, the stars are extravagant. They crowd the sky from edge to edge. They form rivers and clusters and shapes that travelers have been naming for thousands of years. The night is here. And Mariam, her work not done, but slowed enough that she can permit herself a moment, Mariam sits on the low stone ledge beside the fountain, sets her clay lamp on the ground beside her feet, and looks up at the stars. She does this every night. Some nights there is no time, and she only does it for a moment, 30 seconds, a minute, and then she is back on her feet and there is something else. But on nights like tonight, when the caravan has arrived and settled without crisis, when the bread has risen and the soup is made and the animals are calm, on nights like this, she sometimes sits for longer. She is not praying exactly, or perhaps she is, in the way that does not require words. She is simply looking up, remembering that the world is very large, and that she is a small, warm point of light in the middle of it, and that this is not a frightening thing. It is, in its way, a restful thing. The world is large, but here, inside these walls, tonight, everyone is safe. That is enough. Among the caravan's travelers, there is one who arrived a little differently from the others. He did not ride. He walked. Not behind the caravan. beside it, slightly apart, as if he had joined it for the company rather than belonging to it. His clothing is the clothing of someone who has been on the road for a long time. Not poor, but worn soft with use. The colors faded to something more subtle than they began. His boots have been repaired, perhaps twice, by people whose stitching is not quite the same as the original cobbler's. He carries a single pack on his back, not very large, and in one hand he holds a walking stick of dark wood, smooth and balanced.
He is perhaps 40, perhaps 45. His face has the quality of a face that has spent a great deal of time in weather, tanned and creased and marked by expression in the way that outdoor living creates over years. But his eyes are attentive, alert in the way of someone who is always reading the room, even when the room is a plateau and a darkening sky. His name, we will learn, is Yusuf. Yusuf has been traveling for almost 2 years. He began in a city in the western part of the empire. We will not name it, because it does not matter. What matters is the road. And he has been moving steadily eastward since. Not quickly. He's not a merchant with a deadline. He has no cargo to deliver. He has, he would say if asked, and some people have asked, a project. He is writing something down. Not a trade manual, not a traveler's guide, though what he is writing would be useful to travelers. He is writing down the world as he finds it. The names of plants, the shapes of clouds over different landscapes, the colors of soil in different regions, the way that words change as you move eastward, how the same object picks up a different sound on the tongue depending on which city you are standing in.
He has been doing this for 2 years, and his notebooks, he has 4 of them now, small and compact, the pages dense with his small, careful handwriting and occasional sketches. His notebooks are the most precious things he carries, more precious than money, more precious than the small bronze seal his father gave him before he left, more precious, honestly, than most things he can think of. Yusuf comes through the gate of the caravanserai with the particular alertness of someone who never stops observing, noticing the age of the walls, the style of the tile work above the arch, the number of camels in the courtyard, the smell of the cooking fire, the sound of the fountain. He notices Mariam. It is hard not to. She is the one person in the courtyard who is completely still in the middle of motion, managing everything around her through some quality of presence rather than visible effort, the way that experienced authority sometimes works. He finds a room on the upper level, sets his pack against the wall, sits for a moment on the mat, and allows himself to feel fully how tired he is. Then he takes out notebook 4, opens it to the next empty page, and begins to write. Kaneye Raw, he writes. Plateau Road, 3 days east of the hills. The walls are old, older than the current proprietors, I think. The fountain is Sassanid in style, or I am mistaken about Sassanid fountains. The proprietor is a woman of perhaps 60, with silver hair and the most efficient management of a courtyard I have yet seen. The camels are being watered from the east trough. The stars from the upper window are extraordinary.
He pauses. Then he adds, below the last line, I think I will stay 2 nights. The kitchen of the caravanserai is the warmest room in the building. This is not a metaphor. The oven, a large clay tannour built into the floor, with its opening at ground level where the baker crouches to slide the bread in. The oven has been burning since before dawn, and the stone walls of the kitchen have absorbed all of that heat through the day, and are now releasing it slowly, steadily, turning the small room into something close to comfortable in a way that the open courtyard, with its cooling night air, cannot quite match. The kitchen girl. Her name is Shirin. She is perhaps 15. She has been working here since she was 12 and knows this kitchen as well as she knows her own hands. Shirin is making bread. She makes bread every night. The dough is prepared in the afternoon and left to rise.
In the evening, she shapes it. Round, flat rounds of it, slapped against the interior wall of the tenor with the quick, practiced motion that her hands have learned so thoroughly they could do it in the dark. The bread takes perhaps 2 minutes to cook. It comes out blistered and hot and slightly charred at the edges, and it smells like everything a person on a long road needs: grain and warmth and the promise of tomorrow. Mariam comes into the kitchen and takes a piece of bread from the stack without speaking. Shireen does not look up. This is their agreement. They work in the same small space, in the comfortable companionship of people who know each other well enough not to need words for everything. The soup is mutton broth with lentils and dried apricot. The apricot is the thing that makes it distinctly from this region, this particular version of the dish, something you would not find prepared exactly this way 100 miles in either direction. A small amount of saffron, bloomed in hot water, added near the end. A handful of dried barley.
It is the kind of food that enters the body and goes directly to whatever part of a person has been depleted by the road. Not complicated food, not food that announces itself, just food that works. In the courtyard, the travelers eat in clusters, some around the fire, some in their doorways, some in small groups that have formed over days of shared walking. The merchant from Merv has produced, from somewhere in his many bags, a packet of dried figs and is sharing them with the young man from the east, and in sharing them has made a friend for the night at least, which is how a great deal of friendship on the Silk Road has always worked. The man in the dark cloak has stopped writing and is eating alone with the focused attention of someone who is very hungry but does not wish to appear very hungry. He eats the soup in slow, deliberate spoonfuls. He tears the bread in small pieces. He does not look up.
Yusuf, the traveler with the notebooks, comes down from his room when the courtyard has mostly settled. He fills a bowl from the pot near the kitchen door. Shireen indicates with a movement of her chin that he is welcome to take, and he carries it to the low stone ledge beside the fountain and sits there to eat. The fountain's sound, close up, is fuller than it seems from across the courtyard. It is less a trickle and more a small, continuous conversation. Water talking to stone, stone talking back, neither of them in a hurry. Yusuf eats his soup. He tears his bread. He looks up at the stars. And then Mariam comes and sits beside him. She does not ask permission. She simply sits, the way people sit beside each other who have been on the road long enough that social formality has been simplified to its essentials. He does not seem surprised. For a moment, neither of them speaks. They sit listening to the fountain and the fire and the distant small sounds of the caravan settling into sleep. Then Yusuf says, in Persian, which is the language of this road, the language that connects east and west through this particular corridor of the world, "How long have you been here?" And Mariam says, without looking at him, 31 years. You have seen many caravans. Yes. Do you remember them? She looks at him then,
looks at him the way she looked at the sky earlier, with attention but without urgency, assessing. "I remember all of them," she says, "or almost all. The ones that arrive in storms, I remember particularly. The ones that arrive with sick animals. The ones that arrive with sick people. And the ones that arrive with something interesting." "What do you mean by interesting?" "Something I have not seen before." She is quiet for a moment. "It is rarer than you might think, after 31 years. But it still happens." Yusuf sets his empty bowl on the ledge beside him. He is quiet too, waiting, the way a person who is genuinely curious waits, not filling the silence, but leaving it open. And Miriam, who usually does not tell her stories to strangers, or not all at once, not like this, finds herself beginning. "There was a man," she says, "who came here in the 3rd year I kept this inn. He arrived alone, which was unusual. He had a donkey, not a camel, a donkey, and on the donkey he had strapped what appeared to be a large wooden frame covered in cloth." "What was it?" "I did not know at first. He wouldn't say."
He ate his dinner. He was very hungry. He ate a great deal. And then he went to his room, and he brought the frame with him, which the donkey seemed relieved about. In the morning, before the sun was very high, he was in the courtyard. And it was a loom, Mariam says, a small portable loom. He had built it himself. You could see the joinery, all handmade, very precise. He set it up in the corner of the courtyard, where the morning light falls well, and he began to weave. A merchant? A weaver? Both, or neither. He was from a village near Samarkand, he told me later, and he was going west, going to Baghdad, he said. He had heard there was a caliph who loved beautiful things, and he wanted to bring him a carpet. Not to sell, to give. Yusuf is quiet. The fire makes its small sound. The fountain makes its smaller sound. Why? He asks. Mariam is quiet for a long moment. He had a daughter, she says finally. She was ill. He had spent everything he had on physicians. He had nothing left to spend. And so he decided, and this is the logic of desperation, you understand, not of reason. He decided that if he could make something beautiful enough and bring it to the most powerful man he could reach and give it freely without asking for anything, that this act of generosity might become a kind of prayer. A prayer with a carpet instead of words. Did it work? I don't know, Mariam says simply. He stayed 4 days. He wove every morning in the courtyard, and every evening, too, in his room by lamplight. The carpet was very beautiful. The pattern was flowers, but not flowers from any garden I have ever seen. Flowers from somewhere in his imagination. He left on the 5th day. And the daughter? I never heard. The fire settles, sending a brief shower of sparks upward into the dark. I think about her sometimes, Mariam says. The daughter I never met. I think that a father who would carry a loom across half the world for her probably managed somehow to find a way. Yusuf says nothing. He picks up his bowl and turns it over in his hands, slowly, the way a person holds an object when they are thinking about something larger than the object. That is a remarkable story. I have many, Mariam says. And the night is quiet around them,
and the stars are bright, and the fountain continues its small, endless conversation with the stone. The courtyard is quieter now. One by one, the travelers have taken their leave of the fire, some to their rooms, some simply leaning back where they sat and allowing sleep to take them where they were, which the road teaches you to do without shame. The merchant from Merv is gone. The young man from the east is gone. Even the man in the dark cloak, who seemed as though he might write all night, has closed his book and disappeared up the narrow staircase. Only the fire remains, lower now, a bed of orange coals with occasional small flames threading up between them, and the fountain, and Mariam and Yusuf sitting side by side on the low stone ledge, their voices quiet in the quiet night. Yusuf has taken out his notebook. He is not writing yet. It is resting open on his knee, the way a person holds a book when they want to be ready, but do not want to appear too ready. Mariam has noticed it, but said nothing. She is looking at the coals. "Tell me another," Yusuf says. She does not answer immediately. This is her way, he is beginning to understand. She does not rush toward things. She approaches them the way you approach a nervous animal, with patience, with respect for the distance between here and there. "There was a woman," she begins, "who came here in a winter. This is unusual. The plateau road is difficult in winter. The passes close. Most caravans stop in the cities and wait for spring. But she came in winter, which meant she was either very determined or very unwise. Or both." "Which was she?" "Both," Mariam says, and there is warmth in her voice. "Definitely both. She was a physician. A real one, not the kind who learns a few herbs and calls themselves a healer, but someone who had studied. She had been in Baghdad at the House of Wisdom for 6 years. She had read Galen and Ibn Sina and a physician from Alexandria whose name I have forgotten. She could read Arabic and Greek and Syriac. Where was she going? East, to Samarkand. There was a man there, a scholar, who had written something new, something no one in Baghdad had seen yet. A theory about how the body moves blood. She had heard about it secondhand, and she could not. She said she simply could not wait for the manuscript to travel west to her. She had to go east to it. Yusuf is quiet. Mariam can see from the corner of her eye that his hand has moved to the notebook. She stayed 3 days. Her horse had injured a leg. She was very worried about the horse. She spent most of the first day in the stable with it, doing things I did not fully understand, but which seemed to involve her hands and a great deal of focused attention. Did the horse recover? Yes, she was effective. A pause. On the second evening, she sat where you are sitting now, and she told me about the theory, about blood. I did not understand most of it, but I remember she drew a picture in the dust here with her finger. Mariam reaches down without looking and traces something in the dust at their feet, a shape, slow and deliberate. "A circle," she says. She drew a circle, and she said, "The blood does not go from one place and stay. It moves. It returns. Everything returns." She said she had been thinking about this for years, that the idea of return, of things moving outward and coming back, was the most important idea she knew, not just in medicine, in everything. The fire breathes. A log settles into coals with a soft sound, like a sigh. I think about that, Mariam says. What she drew in the dust, the circle. She looks at the fountain. This water, it falls from the fountain. It runs into the channel. The channel carries it to the cistern. The cistern drains to the field. The field, eventually, gives it back to the sky. Everything returns. Yusuf writes something in his notebook. He writes it carefully, pressing the words into the page. Mariam watches him write, and she says nothing, and the silence between them is the comfortable kind. The hour is late. Not the hour of midnight, later than that. The hour that has no polite name. The hour that belongs to the sleeping and the sleepless equally. The hour when even the night sounds have quieted. The insects have stilled. The wind has dropped. The last animal has stopped its small movement in the straw. The fire in the courtyard is coals only now. No flames. A low, steady, dark orange glow that throws almost no light but holds its warmth, and will hold it for another hour or two before it finally, slowly, gives it up to the night. Above the walls of the caravanserai, the stars have completed their slow movement westward. The great river of light that runs across the middle of the sky, the one the Greeks called the Milky Way, the one the Persian poets called the path of straw, the one the nomads of the steppes call the seam of the sky, has shifted its angle as the hours passed, tilting gently, the way all things in the sky tilt, without hurry, without effort, as if the sky itself is simply breathing. Most of the caravanserai sleeps. In the room at the far end of the upper level, the merchant from Merv lies on his back with his arms at his sides, breathing with the deep regularity of someone who learned long ago to sleep anywhere and to sleep immediately, because the road does not always offer a second chance. In the room beside him, the young man from the east, who has never been this far west before and is quietly amazed by almost everything he has encountered in the past 3 months, lies on his side, facing the small window, watching the stars through it, with the patient attention of someone who is too interested in everything to fall asleep quickly. But who will sleep deeply when he finally does? In the stable below, the camels breathe. Their breathing is deep and slow and slightly musical, a low, resonant sound that moves through the straw and the stone walls and up into the rooms above, barely perceptible, more felt than heard, like the ground breathing. In the kitchen, Shirin has banked the tannoor and covered the remaining bread and gone to her small room at the back, where she is already sleeping, with the uncomplicated totality of a young person whose body has worked hard and asked nothing more from the night than rest. In the upper room at the north corner, the man in the dark cloak is writing again, or still. His lamp is the only light showing in any window. The scratching of his pen is too soft to hear from the courtyard, but it is there, and it continues, and it will continue for another hour before the lamp oil runs low and forces the decision that the hour itself has not been able to force. And in the courtyard, by the fountain, Mariam and Yusuf are still sitting. Not talking now, past talking, into the comfortable silence that sometimes arrives between two people who have exchanged enough words that words are no longer the point. Mariam's clay lamp on the ground between them has burned very low, The flame is small and trembling, the pool of oil beneath it almost gone. Yusuf's notebook is open on his knee. He has filled several pages tonight. His handwriting, never very large, has become smaller as the night has gone on, the way handwriting does when a person is tired but not ready to stop, compressing itself to fit more in. He is reading back over what he has written, not editing, just reading. The way you read something to confirm it is real. "Can I ask you something?" he says, without looking up. "Yes," Mariam says. In 31 years, all of it, all the caravans, all the people, all the stories, he pauses. He is choosing his words carefully. Is there one that stays with you more than the others?
Mariam is quiet for a long time, long enough that the question floats in the air between them and becomes something larger than it started as. "Yes," she says. "There is one." "It was early in my time here," Mariam says. "My husband was still alive. We ran the caravanserai together then. He was better with the animals. I was better with the people, which is how we divided things, and it worked." A caravan arrived in late summer. Large, perhaps 50 camels, many people. They had come from very far east, further east than most caravans we saw then. Among them was an old man. He was very old. I remember thinking, when I saw him climb down from his horse, that I did not know how he had made it as far as he had. He moved carefully, the way old people move when every movement is a negotiation. His hands shook a little, but his eyes. She pauses. His eyes were the clearest I have ever seen on a person. Clear and dark and absolutely present. Some old people, their eyes go somewhere else, somewhere inside, and you feel that what looks back at you is already more memory than person. Not him. He was entirely here. He spoke no Persian, no Arabic. The caravan leader translated for us. He spoke enough of a common language to pass the words along, though imperfectly. The old man told me his name. I could not pronounce it then. I still cannot. But he told me, through the translator, that he was a poet. He had been a poet all his life. In his city, wherever it was, far to the east, he had been known. People had come to hear him recite. He had never written his poems down because, this is what he said, he believed that a poem written down is a poem that has stopped moving. A poem must live in the breath of a person, he said, or it is just marks. Marks on a surface. He was traveling west because he was dying. Yusuf's pen is still. He is not writing. He knew it. He was not afraid of it. Or if he was, he had made his peace with the fear. What he was, what I could see in his face when the translator gave me his words, was urgent. He was urgent about something. He wanted to give his poems away. Before he died, he wanted to find people who would hear them and hold them and carry them further west. He believed, this was his belief, his serious belief, that if enough people held a poem, it could not disappear. It would keep moving, person to person, breath to breath, the way a flame passes from one lamp to another. So he was traveling, stopping at caravanserais and markets and city gates, reciting his poems, giving them away. He recited for us that evening, in the courtyard. Everyone gathered. The caravan, my husband, Shirin's mother who worked the kitchen then. He recited for perhaps an hour. We could not understand the words. But she stops. But
there are things that go past words, Mariam says quietly. The way the words sounded in his voice, the shape of the sounds, the rhythm, the way his face changed as he recited. Not performing, not showing us his feeling, but simply having the feeling, and the poem moving through him the way wind moves through a space. We understood nothing, and we understood everything. The flame in the clay lamp trembles. It is almost out. He left in the morning. Before he left, he gave me one line, written on a small piece of paper. The translator had written it for him, in Arabic script, as a transliteration. Not a translation, just the sounds of the words from his language, written in an alphabet I could read.
I cannot tell you what the words mean. I do not know what they mean, but I learned to say them, and I say them sometimes, in the evening, before I sleep. Like a prayer, Yusuf says. Like a poem, Mariam says, which is the same thing. The lamp goes out. The courtyard is dark now, except for the coals and the stars and the faint gray suggestion of the walls. The fountain sounds larger in the dark, closer. Neither of them moves for a moment. Then Mariam stands, smoothly, without effort, the way people move who have lived in their bodies a long time, and she picks up the extinguished lamp, and she says, quietly, "Sleep well." And she walks back across the courtyard, her footsteps barely audible on the packed earth, and up the staircase, and she is gone. Yusuf sits alone by the fountain. He does not reach for his notebook. It is there, open on his knee, but he does not pick up his pen. He simply sits. The stars are extraordinary. He has thought this before tonight. He thought it when he first arrived. But now, in the full dark of the very late hour, with the lamp out and the fire nearly out, and no other light, the stars are more than extraordinary. They are overwhelming. They press down from every direction. They fill the square of sky above the open courtyard from edge to edge and beyond. He can see them through the gate arch too, continuing past the walls, the sky going on and on and on in every direction. He thinks about what Mariam said. The weaver carrying his loom across the plateau for his daughter, the physician drawing a circle in the dust, the poet giving his poems away at the edge of his life. He thinks about what connects these things. People moving through the world with their most important thing in their hands, offering it to strangers, not selling it, not protecting it, offering it, trusting that a stranger's hands are as good as their own, trusting that what they carry will survive the transfer. He picks up his pen. He writes in his small, careful handwriting at the bottom of the last page. The road does not only move goods, it moves everything a person can give that has no weight, which is, perhaps, the most important category of things. He closes the notebook. He sits for another moment, listening to the fountain. Then he rises, and he climbs the stairs, and he goes to his small room, and he sets the notebook on the mat beside him. And he lies down on the thick reed mat.
and he pulls the heavy wool blanket over himself, and he looks up at the ceiling, which is close and dark and smells of old clay and wood smoke, and the particular dusty sweetness of this place on the edge of the plateau. Through the small window, one bright star is visible. Just one, framed exactly in the square of the window, as if the window was built for it. He watches it. It does not move. Or it moves very slowly, the way everything in the sky moves, too slowly for a single night of watching to show. But in the time that Yusuf watches it, before his eyes close, it appears perfectly still. A fixed point. A place to rest your eyes. In the stable below, the camels breathe. In the kitchen, the banked coals hold their warmth. In the courtyard, the fountain continues its small, endless, patient sound. Water talking to stone, stone talking back. The conversation that began before any of them arrived and will continue long after all of them have gone.
The caravanserai sleeps. The plateau sleeps. The stars move imperceptibly along their ancient paths. And somewhere, on a road that begins here and goes east and west and north and south into every corner of the world, a caravan is moving through the dark. The camels patient, the travelers quiet, the goods wrapped carefully. And in among all of it, unseen and weightless, all the things that people carry, that have no name and no price, and cannot be put down. The poems, the prayers, the circles drawn in dust, the things given away freely, moving from hand to hand to hand, traveling further than any road can take them. Everything returns. Sleep now. You are safe here. The road can wait until morning. If you have come this far, if the caravanserai has carried you safely through the night, then I hope you are resting. Deeply, quietly.
This is what these stories are for. Not to be remembered in the morning, not to be analyzed or discussed, just to be a voice in the dark that keeps the mind company while the body lets go of the day. If tonight's journey to the edge of Persia brought you some peace, if Mariam's fountain and Yusuf's notebook and the old poet's gift helped quiet whatever needed quieting, then this story has done its work. And if you would like more, there are more stories here. Long, slow, careful stories. Dark histories told gently. Folklore from the edges of the world. Romances from places that exist only in the half-light between sleep and waking. Narrated for the tired, the restless, the ones whose minds need something to hold, while the rest of them lets go. If you would like to find them, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it means the next story will find its way to you.
And if this one was good to you, if you would like to say so, a comment, a like, those small things help more than you might think. They keep the inn open. They keep the lantern lit above the gate. But for now, for the next few hours at least, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to plan or decide or remember or prepare. You are a traveler who has arrived at the end of a long road. The mat is warm, the blanket is heavy, the fountain is speaking quietly to the stone. Through your window, one bright star. Still. Good night. Sleep well.